How's it? For 30 odd years, I've been taking photographs, both professionally and as an amateur. This was pretty much ruling the roost. And then around about sort of 2008, digital really made its presence felt. And from that moment on, it felt like film was a dead end. And most people couldn't actually give film cameras away. However, I watched a video recently that was sent to me by a friend of mine called Grain, which is documenting the resurgence of film within photography. And there was a word that came up again and again in the beginning of that documentary. That word was authentic. And I thought, is taking photographs on film more authentic than taking images on digital? Okay, so we've come to my spare bedroom for two reasons. One, this is a north light window and it's nice and overcast there. So I thought, let's check out north light, see what it looks like. If it's good enough for Rembrandt, then it's good enough for TPE. But also because of this little guy here, this thing, I don't know where you can see that. Look at it, little elephant, right? It's also got a bell on it, so if you hear some chiming. Now this quite clearly is handmade. I can feel the stitching and the little bits of glue, and it has that kind of weird, unique quality that a lot of handmade things have to them. Whereas this is quite clearly this is manufactured. This is mass produced. It doesn't really have anything that marks it as being authentic, as far as I would understand the term. And in photography, I can see the appeal that if you are someone who's ever known digital, that you want something that has a tactile nature to it, that you feel invested in the process of creating. And certainly I understand that feeling, because I'm what they call in South Africa a soat peel. Right, so this is a little bit of a derogatory term, but I think it sums up where we are in film versus digital absolutely correctly, is that I was born in the UK, so I have one foot in the UK. I have another foot in South Africa where I'm living, and my winky is dangling in the salty sea, so like a soat peel. Now in photography, that's an apt description, because I cut my teeth on film. I went to photo school. We studied film. We studied how it was made, how it works, how you process it, how you print it, how you do all of that kind of stuff. And digital was a bit of an afterthought. But I was young enough to also not be mired in the ways of film completely when digital started to flex its muscles a little bit more than just simply, a scanner or something like that. The digital cameras were on the forefront. So I felt at home with both, and I can see both sides of the coin. That idea that keeps coming up through that video about authenticness, about trying to create an image that doesn't feel like it's part of just a procession of mindless button pushing exercises. And of course you can see where AI might fit into this, is appealing. But I'm also mindful of the fact that, like there was back when I was just started working professionally, that a lot of people say, well, film is so much better than digital, that we're kind of going back into that environment where people are saying film is inherently better. And I don't think authenticity in photography is connected to one medium or the other. I really am liking this light. It's very, I like it anyway, right? Now this photograph here. So this is Denise, and that's Kat and Mark. I photographed this on my Canon A1. It's Tri-X, I believe. I'll have to double check about the neg. I went into the lab, I developed it by hand. I then put the neg in a larger, and I made this print. This is fiber-based paper. I put it in the developer and went wishy-washy, wishy-washy, all that kind of stuff. The print came up, and I hung it up to dry, and now I have a picture, right? But then contrast that with this. So this is Lauren, I believe his name is. So this is a series of images that I took when I was working in my studio. They're all taken on a digital camera. They were processed in Lightroom. I put together this layout in a piece of digital software called Pro Select. I sent the file off to a print lab. They printed this up for me, and I got a framed piece back. That's all digital. That's all analog. Are either of those more authentic than the other one? I don't think so. I think authenticity in photography, real authenticity, what sets us apart, is what comes from here. Whether, I choose to take a picture using this roll of Provia 400, which is unexposed and it's pretty old, so I would say it's probably out of date by a long way. Can't actually find a date on that. Or whether or not I photograph on my iPhone or on digital camera, doesn't really matter. But of course, if it doesn't really matter what kind of medium we use, why are people kind of talking about, being more authentic in their photography? And despite the fact that my English teacher is having kittens because I keep using rhetorical questions, I want to jump a bit further into that and think about, certainly my own photography, how my relationship with digital and film has changed. Oh, look who's come to join us. It's Poe. He's like, oh, he doesn't want to be picked up, does he? Right. He's the reluctant video cat. Now, that relationship that I've been having with digital and film over the last 30 years, it's gone back and forth. It's moved, as I said, that print that I made at the photo school one, the Denise and Cat, that was all by hand. And while I'm an okay black and white printer, I'm pretty rubbish when it comes to color, both developing color and having it printed. And I appreciate, obviously, you can have color prints made and what have you. But if we're talking about authenticity, if you're talking about being part of the process, then you want to be invested. I would certainly want to be invested in the whole thing. So when digital came along, it was a boon. I remember, we had Photoshop 2, I think it was. That's going back a bit. That was before layers, even. When we were at photo school with a couple of Power Macs, Mac G2s, something, I forget. And we were like, oh my God, look at this. You can scan an image and we can make it sharper. Or that was literally the first thing we did with scans, was to make the image sharper. So the sharpness thing in photography is nothing new. But over time, I learned to get better with Photoshop, and it opened up a whole world of possibilities for me. Literally, I was taking their old tagline, the only limit is your imagination, to heart. And it made me a lot happier with my photography, because it had helped me overcome a physical, technical hurdle that I had. But at the same time, I think I lost something because I was becoming increasingly divorced from the actual process of taking images. Now, this was highlighted, when was it? When I was down in San Francisco recently. I was down foot of the Golden Gate Bridge on a Friday evening. A friend of mine, Dan, who I mentor, had offered to drive me around, show me a bit of the city. And we ended up at that fort, and the wind's blasting through. And there's a guy turns up, youngish guy, probably sort of early 30s, and he's got a FM2. So I'm like, like a Nikon FM2, so film camera. And I said, I want to know, what is it, this appeal for authenticity, what is it that's actually driving this leaning towards film for people who've only ever really known digital? Because I thought it would just be like a fashion thing. And we got talking, and he said, no, I said, what do you take? He says, do all these pictures. I said, so what do you do with the film afterwards? And he goes, nothing. Okay, so what, you just file them away and he says, no, I don't even develop the images. I consciously don't want to think about what I'm going to do with the pictures, because I want to connect with the act of taking a photograph. So I was like, okay, that's cool. I kind of get that. turns out he was a commercial photographer, and he also does videos. So he was tired of like having to think about, there was always a purpose for taking the pictures, and feeling like he had to, you know, always kind of work on them and do stuff. And he was becoming increasingly disconnected from the actual process. And of course, with digital, it's difficult to do that because it is so easy. I can take a picture on the phone and bang, within a couple of seconds, it's uploaded to Instagram, right? And so it does feel like in the digital world, it's easy to lean into this idea that everything is just this endless conveyor belt of creating content for the sake of creating content, and it looks like everybody else's. But with analog, that process is slowed down. Much like, you know, making this, whoever made this, it probably took them a long time, because you can't make a machine just knock this stuff out. So there's something special about it. And I appreciate that. I like it, but I don't also want to think that if you take a photograph on film or using a film camera, that somehow you're more special, that if I take photographs back on my A1 or something like that, then that's real photography, and real photographers use real cameras. Because I think that's also disingenuous to the wide range of methods that we have at our disposal to create images. Can you hear Poe? He's just like purring around so much, aren't you, Poe? Lovely little cat. That authenticness. That's what this all boils down to. It's connecting with something that you make that feels like it's truly unique, that it's mine. I think that's what is really driving me in regards to wanting to experiment with film photography again. Because right now, I feel that if I take a picture on film, it will be reflective of who I am at the moment. When I had this roll of film exposed, must be around about 2005. I didn't have a digital camera. This was on a Holga, but everything that I photographed on was still film. And that's how I was at the time. But then obviously I moved to digital, and I do my own things and so what have you. But right now, as much as I like the convenience of digital, of being able to take photographs and do things to them in terms of the processing that I am not technically able to do from a lack of skill in the darkroom, a wet darkroom, that's great. But I also want to slow down. I want to slow down, become more engaged with the process of taking the photograph, of letting the scene, the environment speak to me, to show itself to me. And I feel for me, the best way to do that right now is with film, because the very nature of film is going to slow down. The very fact that it costs money every time you trip the shutter is going to have an impact. All these things. It's got nothing to do with whether or not the medium itself is more authentic. It's about how I'm using that medium to get myself a specific result. I'm very much of the opinion that digital, smartphones, because I'm photographing this on a smartphone, anything like that, they are tools. We can use them. Use them, don't use them. I don't care. Do your thing, man. Whatever encourages you to get out there and take a picture, that's what's driving me here. I love the fact that, yes, there are more people turning to film to, try and find a path for them to discover their authenticity, because it has pulled film, analog as a thing, back from the brink, right? Because it was gone. But now we can get film stocks again. We can get all sorts of things. That's a positive thing. The downside, of course, is that now that I want a medium format camera, and unlike, in 2008 when they were like cheap as chips, now they're costing a lot of money. Anyway, if you've got suggestions, because you might know that I'm like a big Hasselblad fan, and ideally I'd like a 500C or something like that, or CM. But you know what? I'm also thinking Mamiya C330, something like that. You'll notice this is all medium format cameras because, I want to really slow down. I don't really want an SLR. But irrespective of, you know, whether or not I'm photographing on film or on digital, I would like somewhere to store those photographs in a way that I could share them, but not on like a Facebook or an Instagram account, because they're for me, they're for a personal reason, but I want to share them with friends. And PicDrop, who are a fantastic supporter of the channel, they have an ideal solution for that, because I can make a private gallery with a simple drag and drop system, just bang, a couple of buttons and it's done. You see the benefit again, obviously, of digital in this modern age, and upload the photographs to there. They're not going to get scraped by AI. They block all the AI scraping box. So if that's something that I was concerned about, I would be like, hey, that's cool, because I'm going to keep my photographs mine. Right? And again, you know, also PicDrop are made by photographers. The company's run by a photographer who, you know, he's a fantastic guy, and they understand exactly the concerns that a lot of photographers have about keeping their work secure, private, but still having that ability to share it with clients. You can imagine the wonderfulness that back in the day, I would have to send, you know, contact sheets back and forth, and, you know, people making weird notes. These days, I just make the gallery, share it with somebody, and they can leave some notes and flag the images that they like. So PicDrop, you know, give them a try. Check out their free trial. It's a wonderful service. It's so simple to use. I use it a huge amount, especially in my cohorts and all the training that we do in one-to-one. There's a link in the description box below. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about this today is because I remember back in the early days of digital, maybe sort of 2008, 2009. It's not really early, but when there was that big shift happening, there was a lot of discussion about digital wasn't real photography. And I see that starting to come up again, especially with the rise of AI recently. There's a lot of argument about what constitutes real photographs and what is just nonsense, for want of a better word. Digital stuff is just nonsense, you know. And I think that's unfair. And I hope that this video kind of opens up a little bit of discussion in that regard about how it doesn't matter what tools we choose to express ourselves as photographers, just so long as we actually do express ourselves as photographers with a unique voice, with that vision that is inside of all of us, but it just needs to come out in a way that is authentic. And if you're struggling with tapping into that authentic vision about your own photography, then in the middle of August, I'm starting a new cohort. It's limited to 20 people. Spaces are starting to fill up, so I would suggest you go and check now if you want to register. It's been fantastic. It's 4 weeks where we really start to dig deep into finding that way of connecting what's really your unique vision and making wonderful photographs from it. Thank you ever so much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you want to find out more about my chips at photo school and stuff like that, check out this video over here. Thank you ever so much. See you again soon.